I've worked in funeral service going on 22 years now. Crematory licensed, certified embalmer, and licensed funeral director in the state of Ohio. I've prepped well over 4,000 bodies in that time. Motor vehicle accidents, overdose victims, unattended deaths, decomps, suicides, and your everyday expected passings from hospice. You name it. We don't talk much about the strange things that happen back here. Not because we're afraid, but because we're tired. You go home with enough images in your head that you don't need to pile on what might just be sleep deprivation or stress hallucinations. But this one stuck with me. It happened during a cranial prep on a middle-aged male, early 50s, John Doe per county paperwork. The family hadn't been located yet, no ID at the scene, no next of kin confirmed. Cause of death was intracranial hemorrhage. He dropped in a gas station restroom and was pronounced at the scene. The ME had performed a full cranial autopsy. That's a Y incision with the scalp pulled forward, cranial vault sawed open, and brain removed. After autopsy, we received the remains in a sealed body bag along with chain of custody documentation, toe tags, and ME's release form. Standard procedure. That morning, I was alone in the prep room. Nothing unusual there. Our facility runs lean. If I'm on early shift, I usually work solo until the removal team gets back from their morning runs. The room was quiet, just me, the table, and the hum of the ceiling vent. It's always a little cool, 68 degrees Fahrenheit for preservation. Stainless steel everything. Drain troughs, overhead task lighting, chemical station stocked with cavity fluid, tissue builder, and disinfectants. I had the extractor cart rolled beside me, lid open, tools lined up. I'd already disinfected the cranium and started reconstructing the scalp. I had the calvarium clamp set, and I was threading the needle for the baseball stitch. Now when you're doing cranial work, your hands stay steady and close. You don't look away much. And the autopsy light is bright, like surgical grade bright. You need that sharp, shadowless field so you don't miss any stitching or leave puckering along the hairline. That's why I noticed it. A shadow moved across my gloves, not subtle, not peripheral. It crossed over my hands, like someone passed between the light and the table. Quick, deliberate. I froze, scalpel midair, and looked up. Nothing, just the overhead arm lamp perfectly still. No shift in the angle, no one standing behind me, no lab coats, no techs, no creak of the cooler door. I even turned off the extractor pump just to listen. Silence. It wasn't my own shadow. I was hunched over, elbows tight, and the movement crossed from behind, like a person-sized silhouette. Now, I'm not a dramatic man. I've handled cases where limbs were missing. I've closed up faces, fractured beyond recognition. You learn to compartmentalize, stay clinical. But in that moment, the prep room felt watched. And here's the part that stuck. The body had been unusually intact, all things considered. The autopsy itself was clean. But he had this look, eyes partially open when I first unzipped the bag. We always closed them with cotton or caps, but for a second it looked like he was trying to focus on something past me. I didn't feel fear. I felt acknowledged. I know how that sounds. But when you do this job long enough, you start to believe the transition between life and death isn't always a hard line. Some people linger, especially when their death was sudden, violent, unresolved. That day, I finished the prep slower than usual. I rechecked the chain of custody log twice, sanitized my tools by hand instead of tossing them in the ultrasonic. Later, I asked our night tech if they'd seen anything unusual when the body came in. They hadn't. No activity on the cameras either. Already checked by habit. The family was eventually found. Turns out he was a missing person. Estranged from his kids, hadn't spoken to his brother in over a year. His daughter identified him. When she came in, she broke down quietly at the sight of his restored face. She whispered, "I thought I'd never get to say goodbye." I don't know what that shadow was. But I know this. Sometimes, death doesn't take everything all at once. Sometimes the body arrives before the soul is ready to leave. We respect the dead in this line of work, not just because it's our duty, but because we're never quite sure who's still in the room.